Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of Prevail's Compliance Corner. I'm Orly,
And I'm Noel.
and if you're listening to this, you're going to waste another 15 minutes of your life that you're never going to get back. So just resign yourself to that.
But it'll be entertaining, hopefully.
We do hope to make it entertaining. That is always our job and our goal. Yes, to make people laugh a little, make them, God forbid, think, and hopefully make them learn a bit. And if we do all three, well, then that's a home run.
It's a win.
It's a win-win-win. So today we're going to talk about executive functions for the executive. All right, so that's kind of like a little bit of a funny title, but executive function for the executive. So how does that relate to CMMC? Well, from what we've heard so far, CMMC is supposed to be becoming the rule, an interim rule in May 2023. And an executive function would describe, how you get to that date and be ready by May 2023. What do you need to do in each of the months prior to that in order to be ready by May 2023? So we're going to talk about the executive functions that will allow you to get there. And the executive comes in here because the executive plays a key role in you being able to implement each of these steps. And so Noel and I are going to talk about executive functions for the executive. If you want to bail out now, now's your time, no harm, no foul. But if you're going to stick around, let's hope you learn something. And so why don't we get started with talking about the executive function thing and kind of what we're going to explain to people as we go through this.
Absolutely. So multiple different times I've heard this. I've heard it from other vendors. I've heard it from customers. I've heard it from potential customers. I've heard it from everybody pretty much in some way associated with this whole compliance craziness. And I mean, even just the other day, I had a conversation with a potential customer who was saying, well, yeah, we'd really love to go with Prevail. We're excited. This is a great solution. Can't do it.
Why?
Because their executive team was not on board, specifically their CEO. But yeah. And it's something I've heard a million times. Well, yeah, we really think this is great. Yeah, we really want to take compliance seriously. Yeah, we really understand CMMC is a big deal. But our executive team doesn't think it's that big of a deal. We have other stuff we have to worry about.
Yeah. So if this shoe fits you listeners' foot, maybe you should really stick around and watch the rest of this video.
This one's for you.
This one's for you. Yeah, I'm pointing to you out there in TV land.
Yeah.
So let's start off with kind of just what we're going to be talking about. We're going to say, like we said at the beginning, if you need to be ready by May 2023, here's what you need to be doing in May 2022. And Noel, because I love props.
You love a good prop.
Got some calendars and wasted some ink on my.
I love it. Printer. Okay, so where are we at?
We're at May 20.
Oh, look at that. May 2022. That's so pretty with little flowers. That's lovely. So pretty.
Very, very pretty.
Very pretty. Well, what I'm about to say next is not as pretty. If we're making the assumption with this story we're going to tell today that this is either a very low maturity level organization, like doesn't have a whole lot done, or has nothing done at all. So, kind of like this is not for the man, we have everything implemented. We are ready to go tomorrow. It's not for those people. It's for people who are a little bit lower on the maturity spectrum.
And we understand a lot of companies are there, and so we're trying to think creatively of how you a company that doesn't have a lot started yet, what you need to be doing along these months.
Exactly. And I'm going to say something that's going to be a little hard for people to hear, but really, if you're just getting started now, you're a little bit behind. So the idea would be probably the past 2 months, maybe month to 2 months, you would have been creating a system security plan. You would have been getting your documentation kind of together enough to be able to do like an assessment of yourself and say, okay, where are we at? And then possibly even create like a list of POEM items that you need to work on. That's what should be done by now. If it's not the end of the world. It just means that you've got a little bit less time. It is still very doable to get this done in a year. However, that depends on your different resources available, other priorities that you have. That's the big one. And how much money you have that you're willing to spend. And really, do you have somebody internally who can dedicate themselves to making this a priority? Exactly. To making sure you get to the finish line.
All right.
If you're in May, you should already have your system security plan at least created. It doesn't have to be great, but something has to be there. Even if it's a skeleton, it has to be something.
Right.
And you should have a poem loosely created. And a poem, remember, is a plan of actions and milestones.
Right. We should make
So,
sure to define things along the line as we go through here, and make
yes,
sure, Noel, you need to keep me honest here.
me too. Yeah, I got to keep myself honest.
So as we go through this, we should note that, given that every company is different, that this is kind of a descriptive set of instructions, right? Depending on how your company functions, some of these things that we're going to describe don't necessarily have to be done in this order. But again, as we are assuming that that our company that we're talking to here doesn't have much started, we're going to try and speak to them and give them a kind of a sample set of instructions that they need to do in order to get to the finish line in May of 2023. All right,
Exactly.
so let's just talk about June.
Okay.
One of my favorite months, has my birthday in it. What should someone be doing in June?
Yay.
Oh,
So
my
June.
June?
Oh yeah, let me see June. Oh, very pretty. I like that too. It's very
That's
summery.
it.
So in June, and now this is an interesting point because this depends on whether or not you want to have consultant involvement at this point or not. So my suggestion is if you are at a point where you are really overwhelmed, by this point, by June, you should know how much you have to do. You should have
Right.
an SSP sort of set up. You should have poem items set up. If you look through those poem items and start thinking to yourself, man, this is way too much to do on my own, or I don't have anybody who can help, this is the time to have an RPO, which is a registered practitioner organization, come in to do some consulting work for you. That's going to make things significantly easier and go a lot faster. Now, if for whatever reason you either don't want to have any sort of external consulting at this point, or you can't afford it, or it's not a priority, or there's a million different, what ifs. If you decide not to, you need to make sure that you have someone assigned internally in your organization no later than June, who is
Right.
going to be in control of all of this, who's going to lead the documentation charge, who's going to be able to do the documentation. That's the biggest part of this. That is going to take the longest. Documentation. Someone needs to be assigned to that, and they need to start doing that documentation, developing, documenting, updating of policies, of procedures, of the SSP. That needs to start at the absolute latest in June. I mean, that's like, really need to get that stuff done because it takes as long as you think it's going to take, it's probably going to take longer. So that's what June.
Like building your house. You think it's going to take 6 months? No.
Yeah.
It's a year.
Exactly. So like, get on it.
Get on it.
Okay, and then July is my birthday month. Yay! July.
Oh, wait.
Where's July? Let me see July. Look at that. So nice. I love it. That's super cute. I like all of those little stars. Oh, so nice.
All right. What happens in July?
So in July, you really should start addressing actively those poem items. So starting to check those off. Again, continuing to define and update and write policies. Again, documentation is going to be all through this. That's pretty much from start to finish. But make sure also too that you're going through and reviewing those poem items, making sure that you're updating everything accordingly, adding those milestones when they happen, closing out as many as you can whenever you can, and making sure that you're really staying on top of everything, quite frankly. This is also when you need to start looking at technologies that you may need to implement, like a Prevail or, who knows, or whatever else that you might need, or a vulnerability scanning tool, an encryption device, MFA. There's a lot of different things to think about. Start thinking about those things in July and how long it's going to take to implement them, what the costs are. Do your cost comparison to figure out, you should be on the road to making a decision in July as to what technology solutions you need.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of raise one of the things about a poem, and this is also dovetails with the idea of executive function, right? If you have a lot of poems, just say, okay, we're going to take 3 or 4 of them and address them this week, 3 or 4 the next week, and so on, rather than being overwhelmed. Just
exactly, yeah. That is absolutely the ticket with this. If you look at all of it all together, it's 110 with like a bajillion other things underneath it, and you're going to go nuts. So yes, exactly. Take and start to, another thing to point out too is start with those higher level, those higher point items, those big ticket items, I like to call them, the 5 pointers on Spurs. Start with those first and then go to the 3s and then to the 1s. That's going to be a lot easier, hopefully. And also it just makes sense with your audit, since we're assuming, we don't know for sure yet, but we're assuming that 1 point items may be able to be poemed during while the assessment's going on. Whereas the 3 to 5 pointers, you can't have a poem during the assessment. We're pretty sure on that one.
Yep.
So what about August?
Time to go to the beach.
Back to school.
You.
Oh no. Back to school. Where's my August one? I want to see the August one.
Yeah, you want to see
Yes, my August one.
That's just a little
A little mushroom. How intriguing. It's very cute.
Yeah,
Cute.
I guess by then all the humidity and water gets the mushrooms grow.
That makes sense. So by August, you should be at a point where you have made a decision on your technological solutions, if you do need any, and you should be starting to either work with those vendors to start implementation, or at least, narrowed it down to the vendor that you want and start signing all of the paperwork that you need to and that sort of thing. And again, still documenting everything that is going to be happening over and over and over again, still addressing POEM items. By this point, you should probably have a path forward for all of your 5-pointers. Right. If you don't, make those a priority for sure.
Yeah.
And
plan of action and milestones.
Exactly. And that takes us into September. This is where we're going real fast now.
Yeah, we are going really fast.
We got a lot of stuff.
Right. And if we're going too fast and you guys have questions out there in audience land, just make sure you hit us up with the email at the email in the show notes. All right, yeah.
September. So if you make it to September, you're doing all of your SSP policy templates, all of your updating, right? All of your artifact stuff. If you're still continuing to do that, you're still continuing to work on your POEM items. Hopefully by this point, you've closed out your 5-point items, hopefully, and started working on your 3-point items on your POEM, which is your plan of actions and milestones. And if you're working with an RPO at this point, they're probably giving you some sort of like analysis of where you're at and the things that you need to update and what have you. And then the other thing that you should do by September is you should be starting your implementation of any technological solutions that you need. So vulnerability scanning or, MFA or firewalls or whatever it is that you may need.
Why should they be starting those technologies though now? Just, that seems kind of far in advance.
So glad you asked. The reason why is because you want to make sure that they are set up correctly. You want to make sure also that all of your policies and procedures are written correctly surrounding them. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you've got everybody in the organization on the same page about it, because when those audits do happen, you want it to be something that's very just like breathing for them. Oh, we already know that this is the situation. Oh, we already use this tool. We already use that tool. Also, it's really important for auditors to have a set amount of actual evidence that you've been using something. You can't just put in like a vulnerability scanning tool as an example 2 weeks before your audit and think that's going to cut mustard. It won't. You need at least several months of information and documentation to say, yes, see, this is how we've done this. For example, if you say in your policy, we're going to scan the whole system every week, and this is what we're going to check for those scans. Well, then that's what you need to have many weeks of evidence for to be able to. Exactly. That's such a good question, Orly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that people forget about when they're doing this is, well, like a year is so long. It's really not when you start thinking about it. And also that's really true about all of the policies and procedures as well. They need to know that these things have been done for a extended period of time. Right. It can just be a couple of weeks. That's not going to be enough. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about one of my favorite months, October.
Oh, such a fun one. October. Oh, that's so pretty. I like the little candy corns. I like candy corn. People don't like candy corn. I like candy corn, but I'm very weird. I love it. So by October, you should have all those technologies implemented, and you should really be using the processes surrounding those technologies. Like we were just talking about, if you were doing vulnerability scanning monthly or weekly or whatever, it shouldn't be monthly, it should be sooner than that. But anyway, whatever those procedures are, you should start having kind of a cadence to that. People should be getting used to it and sort of, you should be developing those artifacts. If you're doing vulnerability scanning, there should be an artifact with it. Hey, here's when I did this scan on this date and we looked at it. And here's how I said that this was okay and this was okay and this was okay. There has to be some sort of sign off internally on it. So there's procedures that have to be set up and then sort of habitualized internally. Right. On top of that, you still need to be doing documentation. So it still needs to be. It is unending, I swear. Make sure that at this point, you should make sure that your policies and procedures are really starting to get fine-tuned. Like there shouldn't be a whole lot of dramatic updates at this point. You should be putting in your policies and procedures for your new technology, whatever it happens to be, making sure that those are up to date. You should make sure that you have sign off from everyone in your organization that needs to have sign off, especially your executive level. They need to be on board and on the same page. If you need to disseminate anything to your employees this month and also into November is when you should start doing that, making sure that they can sign off on everything that they need to sign off on, which takes us to November.
November. It's not just about turkey.
It is not just about turkey. Oh, November. November. So in November, you should make sure, again, to really finalizing your SSP. That first draft of it should happen by the end of November. You should get to a point where you're like, yep, this is everything. We're locked down. This is how we want to keep it. This is at the very latest you want to do this. Obviously, you can do it before then, and that is fantastic. But the very latest, you want to have it in by probably the end of November to really be sort of solidified, saying, okay, this is what we want to do. This is how we want to move forward. And then we move into December, which is a relatively short month. And December and January, we can kind of hold next to each other because they're kind of,
okay.
Because there's so many different holidays and that kind of thing, we kind of end up with like December and January sort of bleeding into each other. There's December and there's January. Very pretty. It's very wintry. Where's our January? What does January look like? Is it really wintry too? That's not even that wintry. That's so weird. Why is December more wintry?
I don't know. I think I just got this off of a free calendar.
I mean, it's very pretty, but okay. Maybe they're in a different place. Who knows?
So let's just talk about December, or should I just go ahead and skip to January?
Yeah, we can skip to January. So you can say this is December, January timeframe. You want to make sure that all of those POEM items that are level 5 are closed, and you should have all of your level 3s closed as well. Those should be done. Like at least really, really close to done. Like you should be like really, really close this is probably the bare minimum. Your plans and procedures and policies and everything in your SSP, that stuff should be at this point being codified by all of your executive management. Stakeholders need to review it, blah, blah, blah. All that stuff you need to do, that sort of bureaucratic stuff internally needs to get done in this month. You need to have it finished by the time you get to February. That is the goal. So then February, which I'm assuming is probably something Valentine's Day related, but I could be wrong.
It's a little bit lovey.
Oh, yeah, but it's not like over the top. It's very nice.
2022.
We'll pretend that it's 2023. It's fine.
Pretend.
It's very cute.
All right.
So by February of 2023, you should be in a situation where you can actually start working with an RPO or a different C3PAO than you decide to use for your final assessment, but someone to actually walk you through sort of a gap analysis. Basically, like in the first half of February, I'm so glad you asked. So one of the reasons why you want to use somebody else, like you can still use the same RPO that you use to do your consulting. But one of the things I do like to caution people about is that there is a bit of a conflict of interest there. There's nothing that says you can't do that. But if you use the same people who helped you in the first place, you're not going to get the same level of understanding from a different set of eyes. Because those people walked in and said, oh, hey, this is what you need to do. Oh, yeah, now we're going to check you off at the end that you did everything. You want to have somebody else come in my opinion, if you did use an RPO in the beginning. And if you didn't use an RPO in the beginning, then you just have one, to look at everything you did. But I think it makes sense to have a different organization if possible. And I know that that's hard to do, but I think if possible, it makes sense to do that because you get a different set of eyes on it and they may have a different viewpoint. This is one of the things about compliance, especially, is that there is a lot of opinion behind it, unfortunately. And because CMMC is non-prescriptive, it means that there's not like one hard, fast way to do everything. So sometimes it's good to get an alternative opinion on it. It's kind of like getting a second opinion from your doctor. But so in February, you should have somebody on board, or you should be having those conversations to get somebody on board to contract them to say, yes, we want you to come in and review what we have because we are good to go. You also should be finalizing those level 1 POEM items, as many as you can. And again, with the understanding that 3 and 5s have already been closed out, your SSP at this point should be done. Everybody signed all the things they need to sign. You're good to go. You're basically just working those processes day in and day out and developing all of those months and weeks of information for the auditor and proof for the auditor. So then March comes along and it's springtime.
Woohoo!
Yay!
March.
Oh, that's very cute. Oh, I like that. So now it's March, and most likely at this point you've got an RPO or a C3PAO, whoever it is, to do your sort of like gap analysis assessment. This is not your official assessment. So just understand, it's not official. This is hey, I just want to check and make sure I did everything right before I get my final assessment. So then during the month of March and probably a little bit into April, the RPO is going to have the conversation with you and say, okay, here's the audit that we did. Here's all the stuff that we saw. Here's the stuff you need to fix, etc. So that's all going to kind of happen into March. And then we go into April.
Wow. Should people be panicking by now?
Yeah. And so then April happens. So this is a month before. Remember, this is a month before interim rule comes out. Ideally, what you'd be doing in April is correcting any sort of issues that you found in your audit in March. Oh, look how pretty that is. So beautiful. So any sort of issues you found in your audit, your sort of pre-audit that you did with your RPO in March, you'll want to go ahead and be working to fixing those Delta issues in April. So then in April, in theory, you would end up having your Delta assessment with the RPO and make sure that you've corrected everything the way that you were supposed to, finalize anything, update any last little tiny things, which brings us into May. And there's our May 2023.
Interim rule is live.
Interim rule becomes live. You are at the point, though, where you are ready to go. So in May of 2023, and actually just to back up a little bit, hopefully, you already have a C3PAO in mind that you want to do your audit, and hopefully you already have that relationship developed. If you don't, then you want to go back to more like the February, March timeframe. And when you're getting that RPO to do your little sort of gap analysis, you also want to make sure to reach out to a C3PAO to do your final actual assessment. And that actual assessment you want to probably have happen in May of 2023. Why? Because even though interim rule comes out in 2023, it's going to take about 60 days for it to start coming out in all of the contracts for the DoD. This gives you enough time to get the actual audit done in May and also get it, you want to make sure that you get it done before these contracts come out so you're ready to go.
Right.
You get the audit done in May. Into June a little bit, probably the first couple of weeks is when you'll do a Delta assessment if there is one. You'll address anything you need to, and you're ready to go by July when all of those contracts start coming out.
Wow. All right. Yeah. You see why we call this, everyone out there who's listening, you see why we call this executive function type planning, because you have to think about what you're going to do on every month in order to be ready by May 2023.
Yep.
And then, we should just finish off by saying we call this executive function for the executive.
Yes.
So why don't you just fill in the blanks there?
Sure. So again, like when we started this whole conversation, one of the things that I have seen, and I know a lot of different members of the DIB have, this is a story that has happened across different, especially small and medium-sized businesses, where you have a CEO or some sort of president or whoever it is at the executive level who doesn't necessarily see how significant of a lift this is.
Right.
It took us 20 minutes just to talk through that. That was just to talk through the highlights of what needs to get done. That's crazy. There's so much that needs to get done. And this is in an ideal situation. We just gave you a year of ideal information. That does not include things coming up and people getting sick and vacations and people leaving and new people coming on board and like all the millions of things that can happen in a small company in a year. So making sure that the executive level, those CEOs, presidents, CIOs, whoever it happens to be who has to get buy-in, really understand that this is a very involved process. And once we hit that time where those contracts are coming out next summer, they're all going to have CMMC in them. If you don't have that CMMC, little checkbox, you've done all your homework, you've gotten your little assessment, you're not going to be playing with everyone else.
Right. And that's not a good place to be in for many reasons.
And so the executives need to be on board with it so they can buy into it fully so that all the resources who need to implement this stuff within an organization can buy what they need, get the people they need, and do what's necessary to be CMMC compliant in the end.
Yeah. All right. Noel, thank you for helping shed some light on this important conversation. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. How can people get in touch with you if they have more questions about executive functions for the executive?
Absolutely. In the show notes, down there, you can actually click on the little Calendly invite and schedule 15 minutes with me, and you can ask me any of your compliance questions. So,
or if you're already a Prevail customer, reach out to Noel at
compliance@prevail.com.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around and hearing us through. We hope to see you on the next show. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.